Hello, welcome back to HOJ-Cast, episode number 21. I have a total of 12 topics lined up today. This is going to be one of those episodes where I just try to get through a number of different topics, and there's no one main overarching theme, but instead there's just going to be a lot of different things to discuss. So here's the first topic. It relates to this image that I have on the screen. It's a quote from the psychologist Carl Jung. And what he asks, or what he says, is this. He says, "The world will ask you who you are, and if you do not know, the world will tell you." And I think this is a great quote. It's a very thought provoking quote. It's a quote that speaks to how our personal identities are constructed. And I want to zoom in and apply this quote to collecting. This is a topic or an idea that's been percolating through several HOJ-Casts and just through my general collecting philosophy and discussions with other collectors. And let's apply this to the hobby. So we might almost say the hobby will ask you what type of collector you are, and if you do not know, the hobby will tell you. This goes back to the intentional curation of the content that we consume. This goes back to being deliberate about figuring out what the actual available offerings of cards are, and not sitting back and passively allowing others or even the market to tell us what they are. But instead, there is a fork in the road that collectors come to, and they approach this fork very early, which is, will we self-determine, or will we let our environment and our content determine for us? And I think that's a question that I always like to keep front of mind, and I think is particularly relevant right now. Now, there's a wrinkle to this, and the wrinkle is that, is self-determination truly possible? Or even when we're self-determining, are we actually just reinforcing other things that determined us at some outer level? So, like, if I'm browsing hobby content and I say, you know what, I'm going to turn this off, and I'm going to go and work on this spreadsheet or this checklist that gives me, that I'm working on to identify maybe cards that I had never heard of, or that certainly would never come across my social media feed, and maybe there's something in there that I'll really like. But still, what is it about it that I like? Where did that come from? Let's say I do make this checklist and I do come across something that's really cool. Well, why do I like that? Am I really then just moving the goal? Am I really now just avoiding current contemporary content, but now I'm just repeating things that were forged on my mind, when I was a kid growing up in the 90s, looking at Beckett magazines or something like that. So that's always an open question of how much can we self-determine versus how much is it really all determined. It's just a question of what's going to do the determining. And of course, there's the question of if we do elect to self-determine, was that also predetermined as well? That really there is no self-determining. That everything is sort of just the byproduct of a sequence of cause and effect uh, uh, equations operating. But that's the big determinism free will question. Great topic in philosophy. Then we bring in quantum mechanics and indeterminacy to sort of try to undo it. We won't rehash that whole debate from the history of ideas here, but it's certainly a good topic. But anyway, if we can put those to the side, and if we can permit the fact that it is possible to self-determine, to forge and create our own identities as collectors, that we do reserve some level of free will, that this quote from Jung is instructive. It's something that I think about a lot. Is that, am I coming to the collecting world and declaring who I am, or am I sort of slouching, and just sort of slouching in my chair, just sort of holding the device in front of my face, and just sort of letting the collecting world or the content landscape tell me who I am? I think that's a fork in the road for the collector. Okay, topic number two. Topic number two that I have is, I've titled it "All Pumps Are Resuming," which is a very goofy phrase, but what does that mean? All pumps are resuming. Well, I've shown Warren Buffett here. I have this incredibly detailed picture of Warren Buffett. I wish it was zoomed out a little bit, which I can see his nose hairs. And the reason Buffett is here is because we are especially given the events of the last few weeks and sort of all the new repercussions that are following in the wake of the 13 million or the near $13 million sale of the Jordan Kobe dual Logoman autograph 1 of 1. That we're in a bull market. We are in a market of a lot of confidence, of a lot of speculating, and what happens in this environment, as it did a few years ago, is that there's a tendency for all of us as collectors, especially as collectors who have put forth theories, especially if we've built our collections very deliberately and we've sort of made strategic decisions about this card is underappreciated, or this card hasn't had its true time in the limelight yet, or that this player is being underrated by the hobby, but they will get their turn. That in a bull market, it can suddenly feel like every hypothesis is validated. It can start to feel like that the collector of player A was right when they got cards of player A year or two ago, and the collector of player B was right because their players market is increasing too. And so the market increase and the increasing prices can have the tendency, especially for those of us who are sort of siloed, and we're all siloed to some degree, into specific niches, specific player collecting, specific team collecting, specific type collecting, specific era collecting, that we can all feel without sort of being aware of the rest of us from the other silos and the other niches. We can all feel that our hypothesis has been vindicated, that we were right. And then the question arises, is that the case, or is this merely the category, or is this merely and the category meaning sports cards, or is this merely a rising tide lifting all boats? And maybe it lifts some boats more than others, but I take great care to try and make sure that, let's say I buy a Michael Jordan card 2 years ago, and now today it's worth twice as much, that I investigate that and I say, does that mean that I quote unquote picked a winner in the sense that its market value increased, or is that just the beneficiary of a broader increase that's actually impacting many of the niches and many of the market segments within the sports card hobby? And I think generally, I think in almost all cases, that's it. Now some people can claim to have made a uniquely remarkable or a uniquely impressive market prediction, and one of those groups is the group of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander collectors. Now, I'm uncomfortable talking about this because it's framed purely from a market point of view, and many people, and I think some of the greatest collectors, are not collecting for the purpose of seeing market appreciation in their cards, or at least not multiples. They'll be happy if the card's value is tethered to inflation, or that there's some level of appreciation, but ultimately they want to be able to build great collections, and building great collections is more easily done when cards are cheaper than when they're more expensive. So I don't mean to suggest that the measuring stick of collecting, or that the goal of collectors is to see cards increase, but that when people are opining on the market and sort of evaluating their collecting theories, that the market is seen as a sort of scoreboard. So Shai Gilgeous-Alexander collectors who were purchasing his cards prior to last season, prior to him winning league MVP, finals MVP, and becoming just the 25th player in NBA history to have 2+ total MVPs, that prior to that occurrence, that if they had the confidence and the belief that in this player, and that and in his legacy and his collectability exploding, his market increase over the last year trumps, I think, every other athlete, or at least every other athlete who has a sizable collection of, or a sizable catalog of cards, or any other athlete who's sort of somewhat established. And I mean, you could probably find some little outlier examples where maybe like a player in a set that sort of suddenly gained prominence in the pre-war era or something like that. I just want to hedge that I'm not necessarily saying that there isn't another player whose market index has increased by more than SGA's has, but I think that if there are, there are very few. And I think among the firmly established players, that you won't be able to find many players whose indexes have increased as much as Gilgeous-Alexander's have over the last year. And so there you do have an example of an outlier result even within a bull market. But there are many other strong results in this bull market that should actually be a little bit more contextualized. So one example is Messi cards. I have been doing fantastic this year. Year to date, they're up around 92% in the Messi's card ladder player index. But as much of the celebrating of the success of the Messi market that I've seen, and that celebration is warranted, 90 to 92% is beating, for example, the CL50, which is up like 20%, 22% or something like that over the year. That or year to date, that none of them are discussing, how is this tied to Lamine Yamal's market, and that how much of that is a spillover or a logic of comparison to Lamine Yamal, and if people had bought Lamine Yamal cards on January 1st rather than Messi, who would be doing better right now? So you have to, the logic of comparison here necessitates that as much as it's fine to celebrate the success of one particular athlete or one particular niche, that the fuller context requires a comparison. And then and if you might say, well, Yamal is different because he's a prospect, he's somebody who exploded onto the scene, and yeah, there probably is a ripple effect into Messi, but that's not that all that's suggesting is that Messi is sort of ascending as the prospects of the sport ascend, and those are valid observations. But then I would counter with this: well, did you know that Cristiano Ronaldo's market index and card ladder is performing twice as well as Messi's is year to date? Now remember, that's limited to the subset of Ronaldo cards and Messi cards that actually compose card ladder's player indexes, and so you could look at that, investigate that, and see if these indexes aren't properly capturing the segments of the market that they should be, at least from where you're looking, from where any particular person is observing. But given those two indexes, Ronaldo has nearly doubled Messi. But there's very little discussion of the Ronaldo market across the social media landscape that I observe, and there's lots of Messi. So once we bring some more concrete measurables to the table, suddenly the story can change dramatically. So suddenly, anybody who's congratulating themselves on predicting the Messi success, they must now reconcile that with the fact that, well, they didn't predict Ronaldo's success. And so if they were touting Messi but not Ronaldo, and Ronaldo has performed twice as well price wise during this in this bull run than Messi has, then should they really be congratulating themselves? And I don't have anybody in mind. There's nobody who's like that I can think of who's saying, oh, I'm a great oracle because I predicted Messi. I'm picking Messi particularly because Messi has done extremely well, but there's this much more quiet and less observed success that's happening in the Ronaldo market. And so that just serves as a good hypothetical or a good case study in how, one market can be very loudly successful, and then there's another market that's quite comparable when we're talking Messi to Ronaldo, similar cards, similar offering, same sport, probably similar collector bases. And then the one that actually you're not hearing very much about is doing better. Or to bring it onto my home turf, that year to date Kobe Bryant cards are outperforming Michael Jordan cards. And so for all of us who are big believers in the collectability and the desirability of Michael Jordan, who aren't surprised that Michael Jordan's cards would do well in a bull market, well, and we might be very high on Jordan as the greatest player of all time, 11 total MVPs. Nobody else has that many. But then you have Kobe, who has just 3 total MVPs, but his market is performing better in this bull run year to date. And Kobe is racking up 7-figure sales. And we're not seeing those type of sales being racked up for Jordan. So, there's an example on my home turf where now I'm not upset about that. I would prefer if the Jordan market was flat, or if the Jordan market was just very modest, so that it remained easy for me to acquire Michael Jordan cards. In fact, a little personal anecdote: I was working on a possible trade for a big Michael Jordan card that I want, and I just couldn't quite get to on the same page with the other party on the value, and now that card is coming to auction. So I don't want the Michael Jordan market going up. I'd prefer if the Michael Jordan market was much was as modest as possible, so that I can hopefully get this card, right. Like, now that it's at auction, I'm hoping that the Michael Jordan market will be as tame and as uncompetitive as possible, because I really want this card. But those are some examples. All right, those are some examples that I'm very wary of the possibility that a bull market validates all hypotheses, and in fact, that the hypotheses actually aren't explaining anything. That there's nothing special about Michael Jordan or Ronaldo or whoever. It's not the player. It's the category. It's actually the category that's rising, and that all the boats within the sea of sports cards happen to be elevating because the whole sea is elevating. So just some words of caution there. And then sort of, I said I titled this as "All Pumps Are Resuming." So what that means is that the next step here, the first step is sort of the recognition that the category of cards that I bought or that I was touting have done well, and then the next step is, so now you should really listen to me when I tell you what's coming next. Now so now that I've been vindicated that this particular player, category, or type of card has done well, and I'm not going to tell you that it's probably just because of the bull market, but instead it's some special insight that I have, some special understanding of the market that I have, that now you really should listen to what comes next, because I've been vindicated. So my hypothesis from years ago, or from more recently, is borne out. Now, here, listen to what I have to say next. And the siren call of that can be very alluring. And so that's why it's so important for someone like me. I'm an audience member. I'm consuming content constantly. That I really evaluate the content, and I say, is this person truly making predictions that are better than the market? And should people really be falling in line here? And generally, as a collecting strategy, period, it's very dicey to treat these things as anything other than speculative investments at that point, especially when the language shifts to this market's going up and this will never come down, or so on and so forth. That we analyze and we separate instances where somebody truly made a prediction that beat the market, and then we say, what was the causal mechanism that you were able to identify that nobody else was? Or are they really just riding the bull market wave? And we might see a little bit of variance or fluctuation here and there. One player might be up 50%, the other one might be up 35%. But that generally that the hypothesis is not that this specific player or this specific type of card or whatever is thriving, but just that this is a bull market. It's a bull market rising. And so all pumps are resuming, the idea being that people now have a self appointed license to really ratchet up their prophecies about the sports card market. And that's fine. It's free speech, and people can advocate the point of view that they believe in, and they can genuinely believe in it. But it's incumbent upon me as the audience member to analyze it in its full context, and to see, is there really something special going on here? Is this person truly an oracle of Omaha? I think that's one of Buffett's names. Or is this more of a rising tide lifting all boats? All right, let's go to topic 3. Topic 3 is my preview of the NFL season. I like to think about this before every season in the sports that I follow starts, which is just NBA and NFL mostly. And here's how I set the stage. So I'm always thinking about legacy building, and my total MVPs metric is a very simple metric. In the NFL, it's simply how many regular season and Super Bowl MVPs does a player have, and then let's just make a list and see who has the most. And that list spits out these names and numbers. Tom Brady is first all time with 8. Peyton Manning is second all time with 6. And then we have a 3-way tie in third. Mahomes has 5, Aaron Rodgers has 5, and Joe Montana has 5. Outside of that top 5, nobody has more than 3. So I make this list, and I'm showing it on the screen. And the purpose of this list is to highlight the players who are active, who have the opportunity to add to their legacy, to add an MVP, or even to add 2. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes is active. The top end outcome for him would be to add 2 total MVPs. And if he won regular season and Super Bowl MVP, which is very unlikely, but if he did, he would surpass Peyton Manning. So Mahomes really is at a precipice here of ascending to, at least by this metric, become the second highest ranking player. So, or he could just add one, and then he could enter into a tie with Peyton. Aaron Rodgers also is an active player. He also has a shot at adding one or two total MVPs, but the odds there are very, very small. Lamar Jackson is now sitting here on this list with two total MVPs, which already puts him in very elite company. There are not many players in the history of the NFL with 2+ total MVPs. There he is on that list. Now Lamar has a chance to add one or two. If Lamar adds one, then he adds into the tie. He adds his name to the tie with the players who have 3 total MVPs. And here's that list in full: Kurt Warner, Brett Favre, Steve Young, Terry Bradshaw, Johnny Unitas, Bart Starr, Jim Brown, and Otto Graham. That's all the guys who have 3. Lamar could add his name to that list. To add your name alongside guys like Jim Brown, Steve Young, Brett Favre, etc. I mean, that is just absolutely elite company. And Lamar could possibly get 2. He could get to 4. And then that would make him a clear-cut, undisputed number 6 on this list. So Lamar really has a chance to enter into rarefied air this year. And then the other names on this list of active players, Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen, they each have 1. So these guys can jump up into the group of 2. And the group of 2 is impressive. It has Lamar, it has Eli Manning, John Elway, Terrell Davis, Emmitt Smith, Marcus Allen, and Don Hutson. So these Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts can add themselves to that list, joining Lamar, or they could either one could jump up to the group of 3 as well. And it also was pointed out to me after I posted this to my Instagram that Von Miller is a player who is active, who has 1 total MVP, and he too technically has a chance to add more. All right, let me move on to the next topic. Next topic is this. This is now we're going to enter into the segment of this show that is shifting away from market analysis and culture and moving into collecting philosophy. Here is this topic. The question is, what is the goal of collecting? And here is my line of thinking here. I talked about this on a HOJ-Cast maybe 10 episodes ago, and it was when I was deeply fascinated by Wittgenstein. I had a little fling thinking deeply about Wittgenstein, consuming lots of podcasts, thinking about language games and all the philosophical contributions that he made, especially to the philosophy of language, especially because of how language has become such an anchor in not just in philosophy, but particularly in science, and that large language models, which are the basis of AI and sort of the logic of language and logic itself, all these are very topical. But anyway, so I had this little excursion into Wittgenstein, and one of the things that Wittgenstein helped me crystallize, is the following. So when discussing or analyzing or thinking about basketball, particularly the NBA, particularly ranking and comparing players, lots of times we get these debates, right? Like, Luka is better than Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, or Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is better than Luka. What does better mean? The word better, the word best, the words good and bad. Nietzsche has an excursion in the genealogy of morality on what it means to be good and bad. And he explores that what these words actually meant was that good meant, at least at the time of when he was writing, that good he traced the origins of the word good, and sort of the good referred to the nobility or the aristocracy. That if at that time, if you called something good, you were favorably comparing it to nobility and aristocracy, and and bad meant the opposite. And so that's the tricky thing about words like good and bad and better and best and worst. These words are actually proxies for something else. These words are proxies for what we're actually measuring, but we're not specifying what we're measuring. We're just using these catch-all words. And so, somebody might say Luka is better than Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and somebody will say, well, what do you mean by that? And I'll say, well, I think that he's a more complete player. He gets more assists, he gets more rebounds. He's a bigger force. He's harder to score against in the post. And then the other person will say, okay, well, that's not what I meant by better. When I said Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is better, I meant that he's a more accurate shooter, that he has a higher efficiency, especially when shooting from the floor, and that he's a much more accurate free throw shooter, and that he's a better team defender, and that and then he's proven that he can win MVPs and win championships and win and be the best player on a finals team. So that's what I meant by better. And so then you have people using the same word better, but the word better actually means completely different things when you unpack it. And so using that, and now look, I've said this and I think about this, but you will probably catch me. I probably already said it earlier in this episode. I'll probably say it later in this episode. I've probably said it in other episodes, even though I try to stop myself, that, the word better is just so tempting to use because, the word is very persuasive. We all sort of understand the concept of better versus worse, but we're all using the word to actually mean something different. So specifying what the word better means. And so in basketball actually provides some pretty nice raw materials to figure out what better means. Because in basketball, we can measure better. And it's like, imagine a one-on-one scenario. Imagine Luka is playing versus Gilgeous-Alexander 1-1. How do we find out who's better? Play a fair game, have a fair official, have a fair whistle, and see who scores the most points. And then one game might be a small sample size. So maybe you need to do 10, maybe you need to do 100. But we can measure performance in basketball because the object of the game is quite clear. The object of the game is to score more points than the other. Even when you scale this out to 5-on-5, this is the heart of plus-minus modeling, adjusted plus-minus modeling. The whole point of it is to say, let's control for the fact that given these players, given these opponents, and controlling for that, which player has the largest impact on the margin of victory. So if one guy is impacting victory by plus 15 points per 100 possessions, controlling for teammates and controlling for opponents, and another guy is causing his team to lose 2 points per 100 possessions, controlling for teammates and controlling for opponents, that is on the target as I can think of for how to compare two players, measuring them against the purpose of the sport, which is scoring more points than the other team and allowing the other team to score fewer points than you score. That's the object of the game. The object of the game is clearly defined, and we have developed these metrics as ways to approximate it as closely as we can. And if you're interested in seeing the result of who actually leads that all time, just go to Google, type in box plus minus career, and see which player is at the very top of the adjusted plus minus modeling. And you'll be very interested to see which players lead that category. Here's how I relate this to collecting. What is the analog to this in sports card collecting? What is the equivalent so that we can figure out what the goal is? What is the goal of the collecting? At the end of the day, what is the goal? And like I said, in basketball, it's very easy, scoring more points than the other. What is the goal so that I know that I'm actually working and optimizing as much as I can towards achieving the goals of collecting? I think the reply that I certainly would come up to this is that the goal is to have fun. The goal is to have an escape. The goal is to enjoy myself. The goal is because for some reason I enjoy these little pieces. I believe that these little pieces of art / cultural relics, these little symbols that are beautiful and that embody ideas about sports and culture that really resonate with me. And so just participate in it and having fun, that's the metric. And that would be my reply. And the main thesis that I have for why I love sports card collecting in the first place is very simply that I can divide my life into pre-collecting and post-collecting. And my pre-collecting life involved a lot of doom scrolling, involved a lot of just unproductive time spent on devices on my phone. And then my life after collecting, having eBay save searches, having a network of collector friends, having this amazing plethora of hobby content to consume, and so many different approaches. And the one thing that's amazing about sports cards is what an undeveloped terrain it is in many ways. And there's so many opportunities for creativity and novelty and to chart a new course that nobody's ever charted before. And so I can see that my life after adding collecting is just it's much happier. And downtime is spent much more productively. And just so there's the measure, right? There's the measure is happiness. But am I sure that I'm maximizing happiness? Or to analogize it to basketball, am I just winning a few games and just sort of making the first round of the playoffs and then losing? So I'm really not scoring the most points I possibly could, but I'm still doing pretty well. So in collecting terms, am I just having fun, or am I winning championships? Or am I in other words, am I maximizing the amount of fun that I can have collecting? Am I truly playing the game of collecting to the best of my ability? Am I maximizing what I can do? Because it would stand to reason that if I am collecting at the peak of my abilities, then I'll be having the most fun. And the fun is the metric. The fun is the points scored. So how do I maximize having the most fun? And towards that end, what are we optimizing for? That's the question. What is the goal of my collecting? How can I get to that? How can I figure it out? And so I came up with a thought experiment that has a few different versions to it. And here's how the thought experiment goes. So imagine this. Picture this in your mind's eye. Picture that you are standing in front of the world's largest table. And on that table is every sports card that has ever been created and every copy of every card that's ever been created. So there's millions of 89 Griffey Upper Decks. There's just every copy of every card ever created. Boom, it's on that table right in front of you. And now suppose that you have been granted this wish, like a genie from a bottle came out and just granted you this magical wish, which is, look, we've taken all these cards out of every collection. We put them on this table in front of you so that every card in existence is right here. We will be returning all these cards to the collections that they came from. However, you can take one card from this table and only one, and you can keep it. And you can do whatever with that card that you would like. You could put it into your collection. You could show it off on social media. You could take it on a tour with armed guards around the world, or you could sell it and take the profits and buy other cards with the profits and pocket some of the profits. But that's the question. The question is, given that this is the environment, this is the scenario, which card would you pick up? Which card among this whole offering of cards, which card are you going to take? And remember, keep this in mind, that it's my first instinct, and I'm sure many others is, and it's very tempting to want to grab the most valuable card. Just identify whatever the most valuable card is, figure that out, take that, and then I'll sell that, and I'll use the proceeds to buy the cards that I'm even more excited about. But that isn't a foolproof plan. That plan can actually go awry, and it probably will. Because remember that after this little experiment, after I take the one card off of the table, when this thought experiment ends, or when this the thought experiment is still going, but when this particular exercise ends, all these cards suddenly snap the finger, they go back to the collections that they came from. So now I have to, so let's say that I choose to pick up this $13 million Kobe MJ dual logo autograph 101, but that's really not the card that I want. Really, the card that I want is, let's just call it PMG green of Michael Jordan. Well, I have this card, I have this $13 million card, but I have to sell it. And then once I get the profits from it, and I do have to pay taxes too. Everything else is normal here. But once I get the after-tax profits from that card, now I have to try and track down a PMG green. And I don't know where any are that I could procure. So now I have to, go around and start making offers, maybe put out a bounty. I have to try and track down one of these PMG greens. And the lore surrounding the PMG green for Michael Jordan is that there are only 9, that the 10th copy was ripped up years ago. So there might only be 9 of these. And I have to figure out how to get one of these out of a collection. But first of all, I have to find out what collection might be in. Second of all, I have to find a way to get it out. So, it's possible that I won't be able to get it. That and in fact, it's probably likely that I won't be able to get it unless, who knows what a PMG green Michael Jordan is worth right now. So that's part of this. So the first instinct is to take the money, but then you think to yourself, but the money is the end of the story. The card that I ultimately want, my dream card that I'm going to try and buy and then pocket some extra profit, which is a rational thing to do, but my dream card, it might not be available. And so then maybe I actually better go back in the exercise, and when I have that full table of cards, maybe I better pick up that Michael Jordan PMG green. Maybe I better pick that up and just make sure that I get it, because I might not be able to get it otherwise. So, or maybe I need to find some sort of compromise here where I still take a really, really valuable card, so that I don't just leave a life-changing sum of money, and I don't just miss out on that. But maybe I should strike a compromise where I make sure that I get one of the cards I really, really want. I should think about that. And so anyway, the point of this sort of thought experiment, as far as I can tell, the purpose of it, because remember, the whole thought experiment is designed around figuring out or optimizing or how do I know that I'm achieving the highest goal possible in collecting? And so the thinking here is that one way is to just literally give me the opportunity to have any card. What card would I have? Okay, that's the card I should go for. And obviously it's not quite that simple. We've already discussed a few of the wrinkles, but the one thing that leaps out at me when I think about this thought experiment, the one thing that leaps out at me is this: before I pick up that card, I need to know what the full menu of cards is. I need to know what the full checklist of cards is. And I need to review it carefully. And I need to make sure that there aren't any hidden gems sitting on that table. Because let's say I did this thought experiment 4 or 5 months ago, and sitting on that table would be that MJ Kobe dual logo man autograph 1/1. Would I skip over that card? Would I think that card is worth $13 million? I mean, I'll be honest. I had maybe encountered that card a few times, incidentally, never going out of my way to look for it. And I certainly would never have thought that card was worth $13 million. And partially because I'd never studied it. I'd never contextualized it. I never would have known that it was the only dual logo man autograph 1/1 of Kobe and MJ. I would have never known that until Heritage published its caption and made that the tagline. And then once you know that, once you have that context in your hand, even though there's never been a headline about that card. There's at least to my knowledge, or at least coming across my social media landscape, there's never been people discussing this. There aren't prior to this sale, there weren't people, shouting from the mountaintops that this is the best card. And it's still, there's the word best, but in just a $13 million sale doesn't necessarily mean that there aren't other better cards out there either. But the only point is that this card came from obscurity. This card was obscure. This card was not thought of. This card was not part of my collecting consciousness until it was. Until the spotlight was put on it, until it sold for almost $13 million. And so that's the point, is that what else is sitting on that table that might be worth $30 million? Is there something even better that we just haven't contextualized, that doesn't come across the headlines, that we haven't thought about? And so the point of this thought experiment, the thing that I think it really draws out and it reveals, is that when optimizing for collecting, it's very important that I understand the full offering of cards. It's very important, going back to the Young quote that started this whole episode off, it's very important that I don't let the hobby headlines tell me how the hobby works, tell me what the best cards are, when I can just go do that for myself. And I'll make an observation here. I think there's I'll take myself as a content creator. I don't know the full menu of cards. I don't even come close to knowing it. I've dipped a toe into it. I've tried to do that sort of analysis for like Mahomes rookie year cards, for Brock Purdy rookie year cards. I've done that analysis for Michael Jordan 1/1s. And even still, I had a collector reach out to me today and show me a few errors that I had made on the Michael Jordan 1/1 spreadsheet, and I fixed them. I was missing several dual logo man cards from the first year of Exquisite. They were not on the list, and now they are. So even then, I'm making mistakes quite a bit. And so, content that's being made, headlines that are being put out, how much of it is coming from a point of view of a content creator or contextualized with the whole offering of sports cards considered? I think almost none. I certainly know that my content is devoid of that. But that's one of my great goals, is to try and increase my understanding, increase my true knowledge of the full offering of cards of players, specifically because I suspect that just like that dual logo man autograph 1/1 of Kobe and MJ was sitting there in obscurity, then all of a sudden it's the high selling card a month later, there are other hidden gems in there too. So this thought experiment to me is drawing out that the tool that I can maximize my collecting happiness with, assuming that we set up this experiment where I try to figure out what the card that I would most desire to have is, and then what would I do once I have it. That in order for me to figure out what that card is, that the journey to identifying that card revolves around a lot of careful thinking about the full menu of cards. And so here's a different permutation of that thought experiment that sort of just tweaks it a little bit and then sort of brings it in a little bit, makes it a little more realistic. And then I won't go into depth on it. I'll just leave you with it to think about. So assume it's the same scenarios. Assume once again that there you are, you're standing in front of this table. Every single sports card ever created is on the table. And they're all available to you. They've all been taken out of other collections. They're put there. But after you've made your selection, after you've chosen the one card that you'll keep, they all go back. But here's the wrinkle this time. Now you don't get to take any card that you want. or you can pick any card, but it's subject to a constraint. And the constraint is you can only take the card that you can afford. Now you can afford it in any way you want. You can buy it with cash, or you can take equity from your collection, or in other words, you could trade. So like, let's say, I don't have very much cash, but I have, 10 awesome cards. I could figure out the fair market value for those 10 cards, figure out whatever cash I have, pool it all together, and I could use it in that moment to get the best, or get a card at the fair market value of that money. Okay, so if I have 10 cards plus cash, and those total up to, let's call it $50,000, then I can take that $50,000 equity and I can use it to purchase a $50,000 card from that table. And so now my purview is limited. Now, I'm limited quite a bit. I have to look within the 50,000 and below tier and try to find something there. Okay, so that's another version of this thought experiment. That's a thought experiment that shrinks the world, that shrinks the possible options, and says, you can still take any card, but you're limited to what you can afford. And now I think that version of the thought experiment starts to bring what it's designed to reveal, which is, what are we optimizing for when we collect? What would we do in a setting where we could obtain any card that we want? Now we're starting to zoom in a little bit, and then that can be perhaps even more instructive. But I think we should always start with the first, and then the first version, and then come to the second version, and then there's a third version, which is where all the cards are still there. We're still constrained now by what we can afford and what we can or trade for, but now we can take multiple cards. So instead of it just being one card, the third and final permutation of this thought experiment is, now you could take whatever you have in your collection, whatever cash you have access to every card in the world, but instead of you having to trade it just for one card, you can trade it for multiple cards. So if you're a Christian McCaffrey collector like me, and you really, really value the Prism Black Finite 1/1 run, then that can be part of the trade, right? Like, those cards are sitting on the table, I can take those back. Okay, so there's 3 iterations of that thought experiment. I find it really interesting to think about. All right, let's move on to topic number 5. Topic number 5 was inspired by this episode of Cards in Hand, which was a discussion hosted by Brett of Stacking Slabs and interviewing Josh, the great Josh Johnson, Cardboard Chronicles, discussing his Aaron Donald Prism Black Finite 1/1 rookie. And within that discussion, Brett and Josh both made really interesting comments. Brett was sort of reflecting on, to bring it back, to say, what's the better card, the quote unquote better card? Is it the T.Y. Hilton Topps Chrome Superfractor 1/1 from his rookie year, or is it his first Black Finite 1/1, which if I remember it, also is from his rookie year? And then Josh made a similar observation where he was sort of like, what's Aaron Donald's best card? Is it his Topps Chrome Superfractor 1/1, or is it his Prism Black Finite 1/1? And what I notice, and I noticed this happening for myself as a collector as well, and I noticed these two gentlemen do it a bit too. I noticed that anytime we're talking about or thinking about what the apex card, what the best card is, with all the caveats in place for what the word best might mean, that we might be using the word best differently, but assuming that we all agree on what best actually is, maybe it's the rarest card from the most desired brand or something like that, or I don't know. That's really going to be hard to get a consensus even on what best means. But assuming that there is, that anytime that we sort of try to figure out what the best card is, that actually there's a little mental device that happens, or a little something happens inside of our brains. And I saw these two guys do it, and I know I do it all the time too. I'm calling it a simulated dialogue. A simulated dialogue, meaning that when I'm sort of trying to figure out what, is this card better or is this card better, that I actually imagine in my head me talking with somebody who's also a competing collector for the same card. And so I sort of envision, just a little back and forth of how that might go. Like, if I say, the Prism Black Finite is the best, and then, they come back and say, no, actually it's the Topps Chrome Super, and here's why. And there's sort of this simulated dialogue that we don't, whether or not we actually ever have that conversation with somebody, we play it out in our heads. And we sort of, listen to and invent different approaches, different ways to reason and discuss, within this simulated environment, this hypothetical environment, about how that discussion might unfold. And the simulated dialogue discussion when I think about that, when I think about in my head about how a debate might play out between what's the better card, the Topps Chrome Superfractor or the Prism Black Finite, when I think about how that might play out, I think about what are the different ways that we can argue. And so somebody can say, well, the brand premium, and somebody can say the aesthetics and iconic. These are, and I think that's one end of the spectrum. I think that there's an end of the argument spectrum that is visceral, is emotional, is very subjective. Because the problem with relying on aesthetics or relying on brand premium or relying on iconicness is that somebody else can reasonably disagree with all that stuff. Somebody else can say, I don't find that card to be beautiful. You might think it's beautiful. I don't think it is. Or somebody can say, I don't find that card to be iconic. I don't think people widely recognize or desire it nearly as much as you think it is. Or I don't think that brand has a premium. I think that other brands have a higher premium. There's much room for debate there. There's a lot of subjectivity involved, and that subjectivity permits many different points of view without necessarily a way to reconcile them. Now, there are some metrics that we can use to sort of anchor the discussion, one of them being market price. But price is a very subjective thing itself. Price is the ultimate subjectivity. Price realized at auction is just two people putting their opinion on what they think it is worth. And the guy with the second highest opinion of the card sets the price for the guy for the first highest opinion. But that's just two opinions. And if it's a private transaction, then it's just two different opinions. It's the opinion of the seller and what they think it's worth, and it's the opinion of the buyer and what they think it's worth. But price is a very subjective thing. But price is one way to sort of anchor the discussion. Now there's the other end of the spectrum that might animate the way that we think about the simulated dialogue scenario. And the other end of the spectrum lies in things that are closer to objective. Rarity is mostly an objective thing. There are subjective components to rarity. So, for example, let's say I have in my hand Luka Doncic's National Treasures Logo Man Autograph 1 of 1, and I say this is a 1 of 1. Well, somebody who collects the 1952 Topps mantle, and they can and like I have the Luke, and I say mine's a 1 of 1, and even if you have the 52 Topps mantle PSA 10, that's a pop 3. So yours is a 3 of 3, mine is a 1 of 1. That person can come back to me and say, is yours a 1 of 1? Yes, it's the only one from National Treasures, that particular brand, that's a Logo Man Autograph 1 of 1, but he also has a flawless Logo Man Autograph 1 of 1. And he also has an immaculate Logo Man Autograph 1 of 1. So is it a 1 of 1 or is it a 1 of 3? So rarity is something that does go beyond the card surface. Rarity is something that is subject to the particular opinion with respect to what's the category. Or, somebody could even expand it bigger and say, look, those are, Luka maybe has only a handful of Logo Man Autograph 1 of 1s from his rookie year, but he's got hundreds of 1 of 1s from his rookie year. And the real category is 1 of 1s. So it's not a 1 of 1. It's within the category of 1 of 1s. It's a 1 of several hundred. So how we classify, how we categorize, what the acceptable terrain is for the discussion matters quite a bit. But with that caveat said, with that acknowledged, there still is something more objective and less subject to the whims of opinion about rarity. So it is still indisputable that National Treasures Logo Man Autograph 1 of 1 of Luka has a 1 of 1 stamp on it, and it is the only copy of that card as it stands. There are no other copies of it. And that's what I find appealing. And here's another example. Firsts. All right. So firsts are very difficult to dispute. That the first appearance of something, that something having the quality of being the first of something, it's objective. It's not disputable. And so you can come back and you say, well, you still have to be, there's still a subjectivity, because the subjectivity lives here. The subjectivity is that you have to care. You have to want something to be rare. Maybe I don't like 1 of 1s. Maybe I don't like what's rare. Or you have to care about something being a first. And maybe I don't like first. Maybe I'm deciding not to care about firsts, which is true. But if we do get on the same playing field of saying, I care about aesthetics, I care about iconic status, I care about brand premium, I care about rarity, I care about firsts, the last two things I mentioned, the first and the 1 of 1 nature, those are far more objective and far less subject to dispute than the prior three, which brand premium, iconic status, and especially aesthetics, those things are much more up for debate. They're much more in the eye of the beholder. So the putting a bow on the simulated dialogue idea, it points out to me that when I do picture these collectors in my head, myself and a different collector, maybe two other collectors having the discussion, what I quickly start to realize is that the more objective measures, this is a first, this is a one of one, those hold more persuasive power to an observer like myself than somebody putting forth the idea that, well, this is the most beautiful, or this comes from the brand with the most equity, or this is the most iconic. Those things I find more subjective to consensus. Those things I find more subjective to whim. And I'm more moved and I'm more convinced by things that have the property of being a first or the property of being rare. I find those to be more objective. All right, let's move on to the next topic here. The next topic is the idea of a tagline. So a tagline is, what is the best one sentence summary of a card that you can give? And I find that some of the best hobby content creators, and by content creator, I don't just mean somebody who has a podcast, somebody who has a YouTube show, although those are definitely exemplars of content creators, but somebody who posts a card to their story on Instagram, or somebody who puts a caption, or somebody who tweets out a picture of a card and sort of explains the story behind it, how they got it, or whatever. That's content as well. These people are content creators too. And the content creators, especially in the domain of sharing cards and sharing pickups and sharing the reasoning behind them, they often are very good at delivering an elevator pitch or a tagline for their card that can just be summed up in a nice sentence or maybe a few sentences. And then there's and a card that has a great tagline, a great one sentence or a great real quick paragraph summary, it has an appeal. A card whose story can be succinctly told. And so you think, what are the components of a card's story? How do you tell the story of a card? And the story might go something like this. This particular photo comes from this game, or this is the first appearance of something, or this is the only one of something, or this card, the aesthetic properties of this card is gorgeous, or this card comes from the most important brand of the era, or this card is deeply coveted by collectors and it rarely sells. I mean, there's so many different angles, so many different ways to develop a tagline, and every card will have multiple taglines, and it's just a question of which one do you want to go with. And like some taglines are more modest than others, and some should be more modest than others. So like I have 2 of Jokic's 9 optical vinyl one of ones. The best tagline for either of those is simply, this is one of the 9 optical vinyl one of ones of Jokic. And then, if the card has a special photo or something like that, usually it's self-evident, right? Because you post a picture of the card next to the tagline. So most of the time you don't really need to describe the features of the card, although it doesn't hurt. It can always be a nice reminder that something that's nice about this card is its visual presentation. But the tagline, right? The idea of the tagline, and there are some more modest taglines, which is fine. A modest tagline doesn't necessarily mean that the card is less desirable than a card with a very strong tagline, but I do think tagline and desirability are intertwined. At least they are for me as a collector. And so thinking about what is the tagline for a card, how can I most succinctly describe it, and also the opposite of the tagline, but what also matters a lot to me too, how in depth can we go on this card? Even if the card doesn't have a great tagline, or if it does, great. I can give a great elevator pitch for this card. I can tell its story succinctly, but can I also go into depth? Is there substance here? Is there more than just a tagline? Could I talk about this card for 30 minutes on a podcast? And part of being able to go into depth with a card is understanding the full menu of cards. It's part of it is understanding how it relates to all the different components of other cards that are somewhat similar or very similar to it, and distinguishing it, comparing it, contrasting it. So that the tagline is interesting, and then I don't know, the full, like you have like the trailer and then the movie, and is the trailer good, and then is the full movie good too? And I think a card can really have a home run of a story if its tagline and its trailer are very good, and if the full script is really good too. All right, moving on to another topic. This topic is appreciating the art and the design of cards. Okay, so something that I do, and you can do this too, although this does not really get any traction when I post it to social media, but I still like it and I'm going to stick with it. You can go to ChatGPT or your artificial intelligence of choice. You can plug in an image of a card that you really like, and then have it home in on certain design elements, and then give it the instruction to, hey, pretend that you're a high-end graphic design boutique, and I've hired you to recreate this logo or to recreate this design element. Now spit it out, give it to me, like create it. Let's make it from scratch, make it from the ground up. Don't just copy it from the card, but recreate it and present it to me. I'd like to see what it looks like. So here I have on the screen, I've done this for several of the design elements of the Power Deck brand from Upper Deck. So I sort of had GPT recreate the Upper Deck logo and put it to the right, and recreate the Power Deck audio logo, which is IP that Upper Deck owns, and put it next to it. And it sort of zooms in on these two design elements that I get an enjoyment out of that. It sort of helps me understand more of the design elements and sort of gives my brain a creative way to think about it. Or like, here's another one. So this is a signature design element from 1998-99 Upper Deck basketball. That this little basketball in the circle with these two arrows to the side of it, that this exists along the bottom border of many of the designs from the 1998-99 Upper Deck base set. Or here, this is the Stadium Club one-of-a-kind logo. And something that's so interesting about the one-of-a-kinds from Stadium Club is that it's one of the very few cards where the parallel name is part of the brand presentation on the card's front side. So the one-of-a-kind actually gets brought into the Stadium Club brand presentation, and I had GPT recreate that logo, and that's what it looks like. I also did it for Donruss. So I took this off of Jokic's Donruss rookie, and I had ChatGPT recreate it, give me the logo. I mean, these logos are aesthetic. These logos create a vibe. And then finally, here's the 2015-16 Totally Certified as recreated by ChatGPT's high-end boutique that works for me for free. So, or I guess works for me for the cost of my monthly GPT subscription. All right. So anyway, that can be really fun. If you're bored and you want to vibe out a little bit on card aesthetics, start digging into these design elements, and you'll see that a lot of these designs are really beautiful, and they are quite memorable, and they actually are really like logos and brands, little design elements. They're really part of the vibe and the presentation of a card. All right, so next topic here. This is now we're shifting from sort of collecting philosophy down to some personal anecdotes from collecting. And so what I've got pulled up here is the Power Deck Audio 1/1 Jordan, a card that I've been obsessing over ever since I got it. Apologies for that. I know it's self-indulgent and gross. And I wanted to photo match this card. And there is, and you can look at the screen here, you can see for the audience listening on podcast, I'll describe it. There ain't much of this photo besides the Jordan action shot that appears and that can be used to identify, but it turns out there is enough. So if you look immediately to Jordan's left, next to Jordan's left hand, you can see the torso and the legs and the shorts and the outreached arm with an armband of a player. And so after much scrutinizing, I came to the conclusion that this is the New York Knicks uniform, and that the number that's on this uniform right here, you can clearly see a 3, you can't really see the other number. Well, what if that's number 33, right? Like I first I thought it was maybe number 13. I sort of started going through rosters and of Knicks during the 90s, because presumably this game was from the 90s. And I started looking at stuff, and and also a very helpful clue is that Jordan is in the white Bulls uniform, which means this was a home game for the Bulls. So like already I've really narrowed this into home Bulls games playing against the Knicks. And then I'm looking for a player whose second digit in his jersey number is 3. And anyway, eventually I figured out it's Patrick Ewing, right? Like Patrick Ewing wears number 33. That plausibly could be number 33. And there wasn't a plausible 13 that it could be. And so once I did that, I started looking at footage and Getty images from different games, because like there's a lot of great YouTube footage. Basically, Michael Jordan highlights from lots of games are now on YouTube. And Getty has some pretty nice search features that can let you plug in stuff like Bulls home game against Knicks, stuff like that. And I was able to zoom in on a particular game from game 5 of the 1996 playoffs against the Knicks, which was in Chicago. And then right here, you can start to make the match. So you can see there's the armband from Ewing. There is where right here on his shorts is where the number 33 would be showing. Jordan is taking a very similar pose, where he's sort of leaning forward and the ball in his right hand. And you can sort of see the Jordan's clothing matches and lines up. And then finally I found the video of the play too. And so I'm playing the video here for anybody who's happening to be watching this on YouTube. You can see there's a couple different angles of it. So there Jordan, he crosses over the defender, he slices into the paint, he goes up. Ewing tries to contest, but he doesn't. You can see the flash, the photography occur at several different points during that play. One of those most likely is the photograph that captured that image of Jordan. So I have this Getty image taken by Nathaniel Butler from a different angle of the play, but also several commenters on YouTube that I appreciate quite a bit, especially Auburn 35. He and Ryan and several of these other folks, WNBA, they all sort of chimed in. Garrett from WNBA Card Collection, and they've all sort of chimed in and confirmed it, which is nice too, because I know these are very thoughtful guys who probably have more experience photo matching than I do. So they chimed in and said, "Yep, it looks good." And then, given that is the game, that's Game 5, the 1996 Round 2, or the Eastern Conference Semis against the Knicks. In that game, Jordan had 35 points. He also had I don't know what else the rest of his stat line is. They're just giving me field goal percentage and a modest 13 of 29 from the field, 8 of 9 from the free throw line. And that in that particular game, which was a closeout game where the Bulls eliminated the Knicks, one of the most iconic moments of the game occurred when Michael Jordan hit a three-pointer in the fourth quarter and then famously waved goodbye to Spike Lee, who was in attendance. Jordan's gesture was widely interpreted as saying, "Game over, go home," to Spike Lee and the Knicks, highlighting the Bulls' dominance in the series. With the win, the Bulls advanced to the Eastern Conference Finals to play the Orlando Magic, and obviously the Bulls will go on to win that championship. So, photo matching that card was pretty fun, and it can be quite annoying to photo match, especially when you don't have a ton of photo evidence to work with, and when this particular photo actually isn't in Getty, so I had to use a different image to sort of try and line up to triangulate the play. And there's a dearth of sort of 90s highlights and stuff. It can be quite tough. You don't always get a satisfying result, but being able to photo match this to the wave game to Spike Lee, really cool. Okay, let's now go on to this. So this relates to the Power Deck card. So if you recall, the trade between the great Stan and myself, and by the way, you should go check out Stan's Instagram, Stasic1313, STAICIK 1313. And see, he actually ended up, the card that, remember, I sent him the Mold Fusion Titanium Michael Jordan out of 40, BGS 8.5. That's the card that he took back from me. He ended up using that card to procure a new card. And I won't spoil it, but you should go look at his page. Go see what that card is, because he ended up getting a card that he'd been chasing for a very long time, using that Mold Fusion as a tool to do it, which is awesome. So, so Stan took back that one card, but I took back 7, and so the Power Deck Audio 1 of 1 was one of the cards I took back. It's obviously my favorite card from that batch, but here are some others that I took back too. So from this trade with Stan, I took back 2 higher power 1 of 1s of Michael Jordan. So this set, called A Higher Power, is an insert set, and it's from 1999, 2000 Upper Deck. So 3rd year of Michael Jordan 1 of 1s. And this insert set has 12 cards. All are Michael Jordan. So 12 different Michael Jordan cards. And each of them has a singular 1 of 1. And the 1 of 1s are die cut, and they have a very shiny surface, and they have a dot matrix. I believe this is called 1 of 1 stamp. And they are unusually beautiful. I've shown off a few. I've shown off one of these a few times, and people really find it to be a very nice looking card. And so anyway, I took back 2 from Stan, and now I have 3. I have 3 of the 12, and I'm going to go through which 3 I have. But first, let me show you the results of my research as that ties in. So I was able to identify from population reports that 9 of the 12 have been graded. So the ones that have never shown up at a population report are cards number 7, 8, and 10 from the set. Every other of the 12, 9 of the other 12 have shown up. 7, 8, and 10 are the ones that have not. And then several of them have recorded a public sale. So card number 2 from the set is shown on the screen right here. It's actually, this is the same image, but from a different camera angle that's used on his 1998-99 Upper Deck base set, card number 230A, gold 1 of 1. It's the same, or all the versions use the same photo. I don't know why I got really excited about the gold 101 there, but it's the same image, but from a different camera angle. And that image actually shows up on a number of different cards. I think between myself and what Auburn 35 has replied with, we've identified at least 7 cards that use some version of a photograph of this shot of Michael Jordan. And so, but that's card number 2. That's the one of it. Then we have card number 3. This I did not get in the trade with Stan. I got this from Justin 610 Sports Cards at the 2025 Chicago National. But I do have it in my hand. I will show it here to the camera so you can sort of see the glow and how beautiful this card is as I sort of twist and turn it in front of the camera. And then you can also see it on the screen. You can see the scan of it that I took of the card. So that's 3. I have that one. Here's 4. Now this is the first one of the 2 that I got back from Stan. This one is in a PSA holder, PSA 9. The previous one I just showed is in a BGS 9.5 holder. This is a PSA 9. These are die cut. I love die cuts. Not everybody loves die cuts. You can see the shine and the beautiful image on that particular card. Number 5 from the set is owned by Spinatron. And I think he has had this card for quite some time. He's got it featured on his website too, on his spinatron.com under his Michael Jordan tab. And so he has 5. So that probably means I will never complete this set. Here is 6. All right. 6 is the other one I took back from Stan. So Stan had 2 of these. I was able to negotiate to get both in our trade. I find these to be very beautiful, obviously, which is showing off number 6. So I took back from Stan number 4 and number 6, and I already had number 3. Number 6 has recorded a sale back in 2012. So it was in a lower grade. So it was graded a BGS 8 in 2007. And then in 2021, it was graded again, and it received a half a grade bump. And so in 2007, Beckett had graded a BGS 8, and then a regrade produced a BGS 8.5 total grade. And then the other one that I found a sale of is card number 12. And so card number 12 sold in 2021. And I don't know if anybody out there who's listening to this has that card, be happy to buy it from you for twice what you paid. Okay, let's now go to the next topic, which is we're sort of getting to the final topics here. So I believe this is the 10th topic, and there will be only 12 total on the show, so we're wrapping up. So this is a ranking that came from a Michael Jordan collector on Instagram, 23. Well, his name's Bernie, and he has an amazing Michael Jordan collection. And let me just make sure that I actually get his name right. So his Instagram handle is at MJ23Collect with no T. MJ23COLLEC. And Bernie is embarking on a project right now. He ranked all of his autographed Michael Jordan cards down to number 1, I think like number 50 to number 1 or something like that. And now he's doing the same for his non-autographed cards. And he has ranked up all the way down to number 3, but we haven't seen beyond number 3. And I just found his ranking to be super interesting. So number 3 is the 98 Star Rubies MJ out of 50. Number 4 is the 97 game jersey card, not the autograph. Number 5 is the Molten Metal Fusion Titanium out of 40, the card that was just the subject of a trade. Number 6 and 7 are one of the 4 printing plates to the 97 Stadium Club Michael Jordan base card and the 98 Stadium Club Michael Jordan base card. And those are quite special cards because they are the only solo plates of Michael Jordan from the 90s. Just those Stadium Club plates. So there's 4 for 97 and 98, and then there's 4 for 98, 99. And then there's also 4 plates for the 97, 98 team card for the Bulls, team of the 90s, or whatever that card is themed. But that card has Pippen, Rodman, Jordan, Harper, Kukoc, Kerr. It's a multiplayer card or team card. But yeah, he ranked these plates very highly. Then he has a coming in there at 3, 4, 5, 6. Coming in at 8, he has the credentials out of 72. That would be the credentials future. At number 9, he has the 86 Fleer. At number 10, he has the 84 Star. At 11, he has the Ultra Stars Gold. At 12, he has a card that might not be super recognizable to many. He has the Ultimate Victory. He has one of the subset cards from the 30 card subset of Michael Jordan called Jordan's Greatest Hits from 1999-2000 Ultimate Victory, and it's a 1/1. And so that particular set actually boasts a total of 31 1/1 cards of Michael Jordan. There's one Michael Jordan card in the core base set that is not themed. It's just a normal base set card, a regular card, as Upper Deck called it, of Michael Jordan. And then he has 30 subset cards that belong to the Jordan's Greatest Hits subset. And let me just make sure I have those numbers right, because I do have my checklist pulled up and I'm just sort of quoting it. And why not just triple check to make sure I have it right? Yep. So his Ultimate Victory core subset, or core base card, non-subset card, is card number 10, and it has a 1/1. And then he also has the 30 card Jordan's Greatest Hits subset. Each of those has a 1/1 too. So 31 1/1s from Jordan from that very beautiful product. That is, if memory serves correctly, the first year of the Ultimate Victory product. And he has, like I said, he has that card ranked quite strongly. So 5, 8. So he has a 12th. He has the Ultimate Victory 12th, and then he has a SP patch autograph, or I'm sorry, an SP patch card. I'm not super familiar with that card. He has I think that's an XP Finite card. He has another game jersey patch card. Playmakers Theater. Anyway, you can check out the list on his page if you want, but I found this ranking project to be particularly noteworthy and worth highlighting because he does seem to be a collector, somewhat of a kindred spirit to myself, where he is giving a platform to more obscure Michael Jordan cards, such as those 2 1/1 plates or the Ultimate Victory Jordan's Greatest Hits 1/1. And he has ranked those ahead of mainstay staple grails like Playmakers Theater, like Slam Bams, like Golden Boss Refractor, like the Star Quest Gold, like the Classic 61. He has ranked those more obscure Jordan cards ahead, and I sympathize with that ranking quite a bit. So obviously that's why I'm showing it. I'm showing that here's a collector, and he's a collector from Europe, and they Europe and Asia seem to have a different hierarchy than, or at least on some levels, a different hierarchy than we have over here in the States. They certainly seem to prize rarity a bit more. All right, my penultimate topic. So, we've been talking. I've the last few topics I've been of this particular episode. I've been talking about 1/1s. I've shown Bernie's collection here. He's got the 2 plates, then he's got the Ultimate Victory 1/1. And I got to thinking, I just wanted to float this idea. Is a 1/1 of Michael Jordan? Granted that these are they're obscurities. They are not headline grabbing cards. I was trying to figure out in the spirit of Bernie's posting non-autograph cards. I was trying to find the highest selling base set Michael Jordan 1/1. It could be a subset within the base set, or it could be the base set itself, but just a non-autographed, base set 1/1 for Michael Jordan. What's the highest selling ever? And the highest selling ever is $35,000. And the next highest is like 32,000. And the 35,000 sale was me, and it happened a few weeks ago. And the 32,000 sale was by a collecting friend that I know. It was from his new 2020s era Metal Universe 1/1s, PMG 1/1 from Arena Design, who resumed working with Upper Deck not that long ago. So it's a very recent card, and it's obviously not NBA licensed. And so there's those are the 2 highest, and all the other types of 1/1s of Jordan, the Flair Showcase 1/1s, you can just name it, like the Gem Masters 1/1, like so many Jordan 1/1s that come from base sets that you can look at on that checklist that I provided of the Michael Jordan 1/1 checklist, and that's linked on a previous episode in the show notes somewhere, maybe episode 20 or 19. It's one of those 2, and you can just sort of see, and it's actually amazing that there are no public sales of any of this stuff. And so these cards are just totally obscure. I mean, these are cards that when people get them, they just don't get seen again. Anyway, that got me thinking about the having this 1/1, and this is among everything I can see here from Bernie's rankings, which I guess we're looking at 3 through, roughly 25. There's only one of one. Of course, the two plates are one of ones, but they're plates. They're sort of one of fours. The only card that truly has just one of one copy is the Jordan's Greatest Hits, the Ultimate Victory Jordan's Greatest Hits 1 of 1. And I was thinking to myself, it's actually quite a nice accent to the rest of the collection. I've the joy of Jordan 1 of 1 collecting, especially obscure Jordan 1 of 1s, it's pulsing through me. And I just want to float a suggestion. And the suggestion is, if you're a Michael Jordan collector or a collector of any player, and you don't have a 1 of 1 of your player, consider acquiring one and see how you like it. Doesn't need to be an expensive one, doesn't need to be a big fancy one. But just if you're anything like me, I think you'll enjoy having a 1 of 1 in your collection a lot. And I think this 1 of 1 in Bernie's countdown plays very nicely with the presentation of these amazing pieces. Final topic, end of an era. So on a recent episode of the Wax Museum podcast, Kyle, a hobbyist that I respect quite a bit, had this to say. After quite a bit of consideration, I've decided that episode 350 of the Wax Museum audio podcast will be the last one. The Wax Museum podcast launched around the same time that the House of Jordans podcast launched in late 2018. And we were sort of podcasting contemporaries and colleagues during that 2018, 2019, 2020 era. And then House of Jordans ended and Wax Museum continued. And 350 episodes is just a monstrous accomplishment, especially knowing how much research and effort and thought that Kyle puts into those episodes. And Kyle has had now great success with the Wax Museum content on YouTube, and that he's had many viral videos, or at least several viral videos over there. And every time I see him put out a new one, I just think this is probably gonna get a ton of views, because like he's got this really compelling way of capturing his card show experiences and his mail days in a way that just like he's just really mastered his craft. And he does it effectively and efficiently, and everything looks nice. The production is nice, and it's just authentic. It's just really authentic, enjoyable content. And so the reason why I'm discussing this, and that's sort of what I'm building up to, is that I've certainly come to rely, or maybe even take for granted, the Wax Museum podcast, knowing that there's always going to be this well-produced, well-organized, no waste of time, no BS podcast that Kyle's going to put out every week. And I just come to expect that it was always going to be there. But obviously that's not reasonable. I mean, Kyle has many obligations in life, and he's doing amazing with the YouTube stuff too. And the YouTube content is going to obviously continue to live on, and he'll continue to contribute to that. And he's also makes mention that if he ever gets the itch to make another podcast to the Wax Museum feed, they'll put it up there. But that he's retiring the podcast. He's retiring the podcast branch of his content platform at episode 350, which means there's about 12 or 13 more episodes to go. And just, and it's an end of an era. It is. Now, obviously, I can't complain, because we ended the House of Jordans 5 years ago, and he pushed on for 5 more years. So it would be hypocritical for me to beg for him to keep it going when I didn't do the same with our podcast that we launched around the same time. But we couldn't, right? The time commitment, especially launching Card Lighter at that time, it was huge, and it didn't have time to do all the research and stuff that goes into House of Jordans. And it seems like he's experiencing something similar here too. So with protest over my protests that he not end it. He is ending it. And but that library of 350 episodes, lots of evergreen content in there, lots of great content sort of documenting the various eras of the last 7 years or so of the sports card industry, and in the sports card collecting hobby. And just always a thoughtful, measured approach. I will definitely miss these episodes, but I'll certainly continue to follow along the content he creates on YouTube. Just want to say thanks for all the episodes and all the hard work that he did, all the content that he provided. all the research that he did, all the issues that he shed light on in such a measured and mature and professional fashion, the incredible collection he's curated for himself, and his willingness to share his process and his thoughts, the amazing interviews he conducted, just a tremendous offering in the sports card content canon, and one of the all-time great sports card podcasts, one of the absolute Mount Rushmore podcasts, at least for me. So, Kyle, great work. Your efforts are deeply appreciated, and I certainly will be revisiting those episodes, and I hope that they continue to live on forever. All right, that's going to do it for this HOJ-Cast. See you guys on the next one.